Maddie, unfortunately, not that much more than we knew in the initial hours after this terrific explosion that has frankly devastated those that I've been speaking to across Lebanon and in the Lebanese diaspora as well. I mean, a lot of thoughts and feelings and prayers going out to those impacted by these blasts. At least 78 people are dead, thousands more injured, as you mentioned. And if we could just take a quick look at the map in terms of how big the radius of the damage actually was and how devastating it was to the surrounding parts of that city. I mean, this was the downtown port area surrounded by hotels, the business district as well, but it reached for kilometers away from the blast site in terms of breaking glass, destroying property, putting people in danger as well. We know that the hospitals were overwhelmed for hours, that this was already a country, as you know, in severe economic strain and severe economic distress, and frankly, a 2-week lockdown of people basically afraid that they were going to get coronavirus because we'd seen a spike over the last several weeks. I was in fact supposed to be there yesterday interviewing the central bank governor in an exclusive sit down, and we decided to put that one off for a couple of weeks in order for that COVID-19 scare to dissipate so that travel would at least become a little bit easier and a little bit more safe. Initially, right after that series of blasts, I spoke with the former Prime Minister, Saad Hariri. There had been a lot of speculation in the moments following the explosions that his compound near the center of Beirut had been hit. That wasn't the case. He assured me that he was fine, but that nobody really knew what exactly had happened. Now we understand, of course, that these explosions in the port area hit 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate. And that's frankly what the conversation now, at least internally, is surrounding, whether or not this actually had something to do with criminal negligence on the part of those in government. But listen to what the U.S. president had to say yesterday.
Well, it would seem like it based on the explosion. I've met with some of our great generals, and they just seemed to feel that this was not some kind of a manufacturing explosion type of event. This was seems to be, according to them, they would know better than I would, but they seem to think it was a attack. It was a bomb of some kind, yes.
And that seems as if how the market saw this as well, Dan, with oil spiking on a 2-week high off the back of this news.
That's exactly right, Hadley. And look, you've been covering this country for more than a decade now. Lebanon was already suffering through its worst political, health and economic crisis in decades. How catastrophic is this for the country and its people, given the collapse that it's already experienced?
Dan, you said it, it's catastrophic. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a country that was finding it very, very difficult to even pay for the basics at this point. Food imports were slowing. We had something like the Lebanese pound spiking at times as much as 9,500 or 10,000 on the black market to the U.S. dollar. Lots of questions about how this country was even going to be able to survive already, given the fact that foreign donors, which had in the past held out a helping hand, whether it be the United States, European nations, Gulf countries as well, they weren't holding that hand out during these conversations that seem to have been stalled with the IMF. One of the things that we've talked about so many times on this program in the last several months, since frankly the economic crisis was declared last October, was the need for that IMF bailout. And all the people we're talking to say there's no other way around it, and yet the government seemingly having stalled on that. Now you have what's happened in Beirut, and I've got to tell you, I mean, when I've spoken to folks on the ground there, friends of mine and colleagues, the devastation is something that they can't even begin to describe, because this is a country that was already struggling to make it through the day, let alone rebuild their entire downtown area.
Yeah, Hadley, what will this mean for international assistance in Lebanon, given, of course, that those IMF talks are, as you say, deadlocked?
You know that the French have already reached out and said that they would be providing some form of assistance to the Lebanese. We also have heard from other countries, including Israel, Iran as well. One of the big questions is going to be, how much can that aid really, really do at a time when the country was already facing such a terrible economic crisis, having to rebuild at this point? I mean, where are they going to get the glass? If you look at that radius of these explosions, I mean, we were feeling this as far away as Cyprus. That was hundreds of kilometers away. Up the mountain, you'll remember, of course, Beirut is from the mountain to the sea, and the explosion seems to have reached, homes and businesses, as much as 7 kilometers away at this point. That's the kind of images that we're seeing coming out of this country. A lot of questions about, who could have possibly been behind this, if there was an attack, as the U.S. president has suggested. I won't get into speculation. I think that that's already happening across social media channels as well. But at the end of the day, no doubt about it, there are going to be some serious regional political issues as a result of this as well. Guys.